is often described as a story about listening to an inner calling and learning to trust oneself enough to follow it. But the film is doing something more structural than a narrative of self-discovery. From the opening scenes, the island organizes responsibility through staying, fishing close to shore, protecting the land, repeating what has worked, and avoiding what cannot be secured, all function as signs of good judgment. Over time, this way of living no longer appears as one approach among others. It becomes the background of reality itself. The reef marks the edge of safety, care, and sense, and movement beyond it stops counting as a meaningful way of knowing the world. The consequence of this arrangement is not that Moana feels confused about who she is. She has been raised inside a world that no longer recognizes navigation as knowledge. When the canoes are discovered, they do not announce destiny or adventure. They record a different relation to space, water, and risk, one in which knowing came from movement, from reading patterns, and from staying responsive to forces that could not be fixed in place. What Moana encounters in that cave is not a hidden self, but a suppressed way of understanding how people once lived with the world around them. Édouard Glissant gives language to this difference. Glissant argues that there are forms of knowledge grounded in relation rather than mastery. In this view, knowing does not mean mapping, controlling, or making everything transparent. Knowing emerges through movement, encounter, and partial understanding. Relation accepts opacity, meaning that not everything needs to be fully grasped or secured in order for connection and responsibility to exist. Moana's navigation follows this logic. She does not dominate the ocean or reduce it to a set of techniques. She learns by adjusting to shifting conditions, misreading signs, correcting course, and remaining attentive to what exceeds her control. Orientation stays provisional because relation must be continually practiced. The ocean's behavior reinforces this epistemology. It does not reward certainty or punish hesitation. It responds to how Moana moves, pauses, recalibrates, and stays engaged. Meaning develops through interaction rather than conquest. Navigation becomes a way of thinking that depends on responsiveness instead of authority. Maui's presence clarifies the stakes of this approach. His sense of worth is tied to recognition, permanence, and visible achievement. The hook and his tattoos function as guarantees that his value can be read and remembered. Moana does not pursue that kind of stability. Her attention remains directed toward restoring balance within a network that includes land, sea, and beings altered by harm. When she approaches Taka, the encounter does not revolve around defeat, correction, or explanation. She recognizes what Taka has become and returns what was taken, responding to damage without demanding that it be purified or undone. Repair unfolds through relation rather than resolution. The film closes by restoring voyaging as a collective practice. Knowledge circulates through movement again, and responsibility extends outward instead of tightening inward. Authority shifts quietly without being staged as Moana's transition into adulthood or rule. What changes is the framework through which care is understood. Moana becomes philosophically compelling because it treats navigation as thought and relation as knowledge. Childhood appears here not as innocence or intuition, but as a position less invested in the borders that make control feel necessary. The film suggests that worlds shrink when only stability counts as wisdom, and that repair begins when movement, opacity, and relation are allowed to matter again.